Welcome to the 4321. We're in Acts chapter 27 today, in Acts chapter 27. As we've been dealing with the last several times together, we've been looking at Paul's various trials, and now it's been decided that he will go to Rome to appear before Caesar. Acts 27 tells of the beginning of his journey of that. It says in verse 1 that it is decided they would set sail for Italy, and they were taken along with a man by the name of Julius, who was of the Augustan cohort. The rest of the chapter begins with somewhat of a travel log, how they secured transportation, when they set sail, how they set sail. But as the season progressed, it became more dangerous, and Paul says in verse 10 that there was a great deal of danger to the crew, to the cargo, and the ship itself. But the captain of the guard decided to listen to the pilot and those others associated on the ship, and they set sail anyway. And as a result, they were ultimately caught up in a violent wind called an Euraquilo in verse 14. As they continued on, they began to despair for their lives, and Paul wanted to reassure them that God was going to be with them and see them through. You see in verse 24, "Do not be afraid, Paul, for you must stand before Caesar, and behold, God has granted you all those who are sailing with you." And he tells them to take courage and trust in God. And as the story plays out, we see at the very end of verse 44, "And so it happened, they were all brought safely to land." Paul confirms God's promises, and God delivers at the end of the text. Guys, what do you all see in the text?
As you said just a moment ago, in verse 22 and verse 24, Paul was assured by the angel that there would be no loss of life, that God was going to be with them, and he was going to be with them because of Paul primarily. Paul was going to Rome. God was going to see to that, but God was going to make sure the others were safe as well. So there was a promise of safety. But at the end of verse 26, we find, "But we must run aground on some island." That means it's going to be tough. They were going to be shipwrecked, but they were going to be safe. And that reminds me that there are times in life that we draw great assurance from the fact that God is a God who protects us. We remember Psalm 23, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." God never says that there will not be difficult times. He will protect us, but there will be difficult times. And just because we're his children doesn't mean that those times won't come, and we don't need to be surprised by that. Those times will come within our life. God will be there with us. He will protect us. He will shelter us. He will strengthen us. He will be there with us side by side. But those times will come, and I think we need to remember that in our life.
Amen.
Well, I love the fact that in verse 35, Paul gives thanks to God in the presence of all. Like Mark was talking about, this is one of those hard times that Paul's going to have to go to, and he doesn't forget to thank God for what he has in the presence of everyone. He thanks God. I don't know about you, but sometimes when I've got a lot going on in my life, maybe it's something difficult, I'm not sure the first thing that I think of doing is thanking God for whatever I have or whatever I'm going through. But I think we need to think about that. That's one of our responsibilities as Christians, to be thankful to God, because that's what helps us get through these difficult times.
Amen. Two great applications. Thank you for joining us today. If you've got any thoughts on Acts 27 or questions, please put them in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Please join us tomorrow as we jump into Acts chapter 28. Have a great